Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this session of Bookbytes on this last Saturday in Ramadan. We've had a fantastic few beautiful publications that we've shared over the last few weeks. And I'm very excited today to speak to the editor and writer of Azanian Muslims Stories, which was recently published. And I think that it's an anthology of such powerful narrative that more of us should be reading it. I went through this particular compilation just feeling so empowered and inspired and motivated by the stories that I read. And I think that's the thing about narrative biography is it really, really reaches deep into the human essence of our stories, our local stories. We'll be interviewing today with Brother Malik Arafat, who needs very little introduction in the media and the Muslim space, but I'll just go through, some of this extensively amazing and incredible CV. Mr. Malik Arafat is originally from Soweto in South Africa. He's a veteran Azanian Muslim activist, author, former press, radio, TV journalist, and entrepreneur. He's a huge inspiration to so many of us young ones in the media space, especially. He's currently interim president of the Africa and Diaspora Muslims Assembly, civic organization, but his extensive sort of volunteer and the executive positions that he's held in various organizations, founding positions, for example, have come from his own activism from his youth days. Brother Malik adopted Islam in 1978. He's a community elder and leader in so many organizations, as I've said. He's a member of Al-Ukhwa Al-Khalisa. He was a member of the MYM at the time, the Muslim Youth Movement. A founder member of Islamic Emirate of South Africa, a foreign representative of Akamu Rabitun, a wazir in Soweto as an administrator under certain organizations, both in Soweto in particular and South Africa in general, an imam at Lamini Masjid, also a founder member and deputy president of Muslim Community South Africa, a founder member of the African Muslim Institute, a founder leader of Donate a Book campaign, so very strongly involved in literacy initiatives as well. The deputy chairperson of Wildeviersfontein Everton Community, a national coordinator of House of Ummah, and founder leader of the African Muslim Assembly of Azania, and also a founder member and of the National Writers Association of South Africa. And what's important here is they had this incredible initiative recently where they hosted writers and community from Gaza, from Palestine, took them on a whirlwind tour around South Africa. We'll pick Brother Malik's brain about the initiative that was signed, the documentation and commitments that were made during that time with the ongoing activism in aid of Palestine. And also a founder member of the Movement for United South Africa, founder leader of Africa and Diaspora Muslims Assembly and ongoing initiatives. Also, he has authored, edited, and compiled multiple publications. And today we'll be talking in particular about Azanian Muslim narratives. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi to Brother Malik. I've also got a fellow writer and contributor to the anthology, Sister Zainab Mujahid. Is a 54-year-old Muslimah born and bred in a Christian home in Pretoria, South Africa. She embraced Islam in October 2002. She has worked as a Metropolitan Police officer and professional personal assistant in South Africa. She migrated to Egypt in 2005, and she lives with her beautiful family, her in-laws in Egypt. She also worked at an international call center supporting South African languages as a language practitioner, and she is an entrepreneur conducting home-based businesses from her current base in Egypt. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sister Zainab and Brother Malik, I am so honored to have you on my show today. Welcome to Bookbytes.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Shafinaaz. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for having us. I'm very excited. Thank you so much.
Brother Malik, also, I felt so, so inspired by reading this Azanian Muslim Stories. I know we met at the Okaf stall. It was a huge blessing to meet you. And I couldn't start the show without giving readers some inkling of the immense body of work that you've put out there, but also of the immense contribution you've made to community through your activism, through your love of literacy, and as a community elder, as a Muslim community elder, because of the kind of inspiration and the da'wah that you do. I thank you. May Allah grant you afia and barakah for all that you do. It's a pleasure to have you. Please speak to us about some of your activism coming through in the form of this particular compilation of stories.
SubhanAllah, it really started off as an idea, having and also having discussed with a number of our brothers and sisters regarding their plight and the situation, etc. And I thought, because most of the time the narrative in the media, particularly Muslim media, is, skewed towards those who the means, who have access to the media and, can give their stories of what's happening in society. As you know, that dawah in South Africa has become commercialized. And those people who are running institutions, NGOs, etc., have a particular narrative they give about Islam and how Islam is growing in the township. So when that thought came, I thought, well, SubhanAllah, I'm going to suspend my story because for a long time I've written and I've spoken, about my own situation and my experiences, etc. And I said, rather, let's have people who are on the ground, relate their stories. So I sent out a WhatsApp request and, mashallah, 17 people responded. And the vast majority of them are people who've never in their lives written a document, not even a book. And, and I encourage them. I remember some of them, will say to me, as Malik, how do we do this? Can we, read, can we just narrate it by voice, and I said, Bismillah, do that. And so I translated some of them and I put them onto paper. Some of them wrote and I edited their work. So it was for me a lovely journey because I also got to know and understand much deeper, the people that I interact with on a regular basis as to their stories and their challenges, etc. Because sometimes you think you know a person, it's only when they write down their stories that you actually begin to know and understand them even much deeper. So it was a marvelous experience that I went through.
It takes such a journey to be able to collate the material, to encourage people to write their stories, because it means it takes courage also to put your story out there, for the individuals, especially you say some have never written before, some have never thought that their story might be something that someone might listen to. It's empowering as well, I'm sure, to see those stories in print, and then further empowering as a reader. As myself reading those stories, I thought, but these are, it's a small booklet, but there's so much power in these stories, and being able to read them and the insight one gains from that. What was the response from most of the readers, most of your contributors, rather, once they saw this in print?
Well, the fact that it came out in a book, there was a huge fascination, in that, somebody suddenly realized that in fact I'm an author. I have a book in my name. So it was, for them, a lovely experience. Some of them never ever in their lives thought they could ever have become authors. So yeah, I think also some would have said to me that it has inspired them to write even more now. And so yeah, hopefully, inshallah, they'll become authors in their own right in time.
Alhamdulillah for that. I mean, you've definitely inspired that sort of thing. Let's speak to Sister Zainab, because I read her story. Yours is the third story in the collection. It's incredible to see that at the same time it's a sharing of your journey, but also of your struggles. What was it like bringing out the story? What was your thought process writing your story, and to also finally see it put together like this? And what has the response been from anyone who's read your story, especially maybe your children, your family?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Actually, the time when we started giving our stories to Brother Malik Arafat, it was the perfect timing because it was at the time when I was contemplating to write my own biography, of which most of it has been mentioned in the book. However, not much of it, because on the book we just gave some details and points here and there, alhamdulillah. However, some of the writers did contact me and they found my story to be like full of challenges and lessons to learn from them, and inspired some of them. And even some of my colleagues at work where I used to work, I loaned them the book to read here and there, and then it gave them inspiration. And alhamdulillah, one person who read the book, especially my story, he's an Egyptian Christian. He became a Muslim, alhamdulillah, through reading the stories. And
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless you.
Alhamdulillah. So, alhamdulillah, where there is hardship, there is ease. It was not easy for me to become a Muslim based on my background, the society I grew up from, and the family that I grew up from. So it wasn't easy, and it really gave me pain and pain and pain. But alhamdulillah, Allah gave me strength and afia and kept me moving and going. And alhamdulillah, here I am now and having my Ramadan, my 21st Ramadan, alhamdulillah, since I became a Muslim, alhamdulillah. So we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for everything. And the book also, someone made copies to, especially only my story, to read and to inspire other Muslims and non-Muslims. Alhamdulillah. But it's an amazing book. I also got inspiration from the stories of my co-authors and also from the story of Brother Malik. It's an amazing book. It inspires, it encourages, it motivates. And as they say, history gives motivation. So from the history, you will learn and you'll be motivated and inspired. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I was so inspired to read your story because you have so much of courage. You were unapologetic, even as a young person, following your heart and the feeling of your heart. And certainly the Almighty guides whom He wills. May He have mercy on us, inshallah. So it's beautiful to be able to read how your journey went. And I understand that you had your struggles along the way, the fear from within your original family. And yet you persevered and Almighty guided you. So it's beautiful to see how that happened. I'm so blessed and grateful to you that you were able to share the story with us and present the story in that way. And I'm grateful to Brother Malik for inviting you online today so that I could actually speak to you about it. Now, you say you have written a broader biography. I know how difficult it is to bring about, this greater sort of inspired manuscript. Memoir is not an easy task because there's so much that you can bring out, and you'll be faced with questions from whoever's you encounter that you're writing about. So how far are you with the broader manuscript, and do you anticipate that at some point we'll be able to read the full publication, inshallah?
Yes, inshallah. I'm getting inspiration from my ex-colleague. She's an Egyptian, Ines Methat. She will always say, Zainab, how far are you with the book? And whenever she reminds me, I put the pen down, I write, I go on. I'm now on page 32. And inshallah, soon after Ramadan, I will continue and I will write, and then I will achieve my goal, inshallah, by the mercy of Allah. It will inspire a lot of people, and inshallah, may Allah give guidance to those that He has chosen. And may Allah not make it hard for anyone to become a Muslim as it happened with me. But Allah guides whomever He wills, and Allah will make ease after hardship. The saddest part of my being a Muslim was that I lost kind of custody of my children because of being a Muslim. But alhamdulillah, Allah guides whomever He wills, and He guided my son Muhammad in 2009 to become a Muslim, alhamdulillah, through my husband. So Alhamdulillah, he's a Muslim, his wife is a Muslim, and he has a beautiful Muslim child, Alhamdulillah. And my son is also a Muslim, Alhamdulillah. And I pray for my progeny to become Muslims, to meet the people who say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, because when Allah has released the Hidayat, no one can stop it and no one can take it away except Allah. So may Allah guide all my family, may Allah make it easy for all Muslims, and may Allah give Hidayat to those who are the enemies of Islam. Ya Rab.
I mean, my sister, you have such a beautiful heart that no wonder the Almighty Allah favors you, and He has favored you with so much of barakah and the iman for your progeny, for yourself and for your progeny, and ongoing, inshallah. You have a beautiful heart, and you will definitely inspire many, many more. So I look forward to when your story comes out, because I'll be waiting. I'll be waiting. It's always great to have a mentor or somebody who's sort of motivating you to keep writing, even if it's just one page a day or whatever you can manage. I want to bring Brother Malik back in, because I mean, it's so exciting when I hear about greater projects coming of having written a short story or a short narrative. This is the power of writing our stories, and it also speaks to the necessity of encouraging our youth, especially, to write our stories, our elders to write their experiences. Brother Malik, there are some stories within this that also impacted on me. Some of the themes that came up, we spoke about in the past, about issues of racism that we need to overcome within our community. But also, I was inspired by one or two of the stories that spoke about brothers from within the prisons who belonged to the gangs, needing a kind of sort of belonging, but who were inspired to Islam from within those spaces, their convictions and their sense of justice and their sense of, it just drew them to Islam. Speak to me about some of those stories where they so powerfully come together as even as leaders from within those ranks, rehabilitated, but then become Muslim from within those ranks. Speak to me about those stories.
Yeah, subhanAllah, that is amazing that somebody who is in a confined space like a prison would, have a sense, presence, a sense of, wanting to change himself within that situation, and question his background and the things that he did, and one of our brothers here wrote his, the spirit of Solankoma, his narrative is amazing, because in the time that he spent in prison, he was able to change his life, and and he was fortunate to meet a brother who visits prisons to help a Muslim brother who does work in prisons, and who assisted him in terms of guiding him towards understanding the basics of the deen, etc., etc. Today, the brother is he left prison, and he's doing excellent work in rehabilitation. He does a lot of speaking tours and things like those, to rehabilitate former prisoners and help them, outside of prison. So you see, a man like that has, in his right, he's become a social activist, from being a misfit in society to become somebody like that is not an easy journey at all. So, you look at stories like that and you realize that, in fact, Islam has the potential of lifting our people from very difficult situations they find themselves in, where, on a day-to-day basis, they're faced with gangsterism, they're faced with drugs, they're faced with all sorts of evil and wrong things, and and their choices are limited. And so, for a man who comes out of that environment and finds a bit of space, in just a few years that he spends in prison, and is able to change his life like that, tells you that there is a strong desire amongst our people for change. Our people are searching for something, and hopefully that will become that something they're searching for.
And searching for a sense of belonging, but also leadership. And finding leadership in the example of our hadith, for example. I found that each of these stories didn't speak of people being like bombarded with material or a kind of response to say you have to join this kind of, new deen or whatever the case might be. They were slowly sort of inspired through life, through observing other Muslims, to having a Muslim friend and wanting to know more. And I loved how those stories came through, that it was divine. I would believe, it's divine inspiration. As we say, Allah guides whom He wills. So the stories so beautifully, organically speak about, on the one hand, the simple kind of this easy move into Islam, along with the struggles faced with society. Because obviously, if you're coming from not within a Muslim community, you might be faced with certain challenges within the family, fear maybe, fear of loss, fear of something different, change. Speak to us about that. Because, I mean,
adopting Islam is such a powerful thing, really. It's only when you do it or you've done it that you can understand it. Because you really are breaking from the old to the new. You're renewing your life in the sense that now you're recommitting yourself to a particular set of ethos, a new lifestyle. And in this instance, when you take the Shahada, it's actually a contract you're making between yourself and Allah. And for us, those who have adopted Islam, we never forget that moment, because it's a defining moment in our lives, and we forever remember this contract we have with Allah. And it's for that reason that people who have adopted Islam, recently, you find that they are very, deep in their understanding of Islam, or have a strong desire to understand Islam, and they search and try and find out and understand better what Islam is all about. For them, Islam is not a culture; it is actually a constitution, and that strength is, I think, what will make Islam be revived in this country, or at least globally. If Dawah grows globally as well. I think, in terms of South Africa, Islam is untested, as an ideology, as a way of life, as an alternative to capitalism and socialism. And I think it's people like these who've written this book, who have the capacity to then lift Islam and make it an alternative for the people of this country, and possibly bring about change, or the required change in the country. And so I'm, having read the stories and being part of this narrative, I'm really inspired. That there is a future, because most of the writers here are young. I feel that for some of us who are already at the edge of life, hopefully when we depart, there will be people who lift the flag of Islam, and spread Islam, because it's the only thing that should happen in this country. If all the Muslims in this country could pause a minute and say, what is it that we can do to bring significant change in this country? It would be for them to support Dawah, the growth of Islam in South Africa. And that, for me, is the real and only solution to the challenges that we face in the country.
I feel in so many ways, in some ways we think of Muslims in South Africa as rather insular in thinking. And yet we have access to so much of scholarship that we didn't have maybe 20 years ago. There's a far wider range of scholarship, both locally and globally. We have greater access through social media and other platforms. And I'm hoping that changes the dynamic, so we understand that why Islam, Muslims are not a monolithic entity. There's a greater impetus on us to join forces, to join hands, in order to get the most out of being part of the global ummah. Now, the big concern is, as other youth, I feel hopeful that our youth is taking on these kinds of initiatives better than maybe we did in the past, or we accomplished in the past. We were held down by divisions, by cultural divisions, and I'm hoping that we are throwing those cloaks away, throwing those divisions aside, inshallah. What would your comment be on that?
I think the need for for people to go across the bridge, across the railway line, as we used to say before, and embrace each other is very important. We have a beautiful history about the Muhajirun and the Ansar, and how that relationship, built Medina and made Medina what it became. And from that, Islam grew. So, that example of a cross-cultural meeting, with people who come from diverse conditions and areas and backgrounds, etc., deliberately dawn off their background and decide to start a new tomorrow, a new future together. That is powerful. And I think I have a fear in that, I think a lot of our people in the country, particularly, your established Muslim community, most of them don't realize and understand this, because to a great extent, Islam for them is cultural. It is traditional. It is it's about our grandfathers. This is what our grandfathers used to do. Therefore, we just do whatever they did, and so they don't want to go beyond themselves and realize that in fact they're in a country, in a continent that is not from where their grandfathers originally come from, and therefore there's a need to embrace being African and really be truly part of the soil, part of the people of the peoples of the continent, speak their languages, embrace them, live with them, eat with them, marry among them, interact with them, and all of those things. And I find that there's fear in the established Muslim communities to do that. It seems by doing that they will lose themselves. In fact, just doing that will enrich the Muslim community in South Africa. It's very painful when you read that Islam arrived here officially. So I mean, we know that there was Islam here prior to the Europeans, but officially Islam arrived in the Cape 2 years after the arrival of Jan van Riebeeck, which is 1654. But you realize that in the country, the Christians who arrived in 1652 had managed to convert indigenous peoples of this country to a point where 80% of the African community became Christian or are Christian as we speak. And the question is, how is it that since 1652, Muslims in this country are only just about 2% of the population, or some people say 3%. But that tells you that, in fact, there is a disjoint here. Something didn't happen or something is not happening that is hampering the Muslims from achieving the objective of spreading the deen, because by nature Islam is propagated, and you ask yourself, why is it that Islam has not been propagated? Because the only way for Islam to grow and flourish is when new blood comes in, new people come in, new ethos come in to enrich the communities that we Muslims grow. And so I think for us, for example, is this challenge. The Africans who became Muslim a few years ago are questioning this, and they're feeling maybe we should go alone in this. And you can realize that they're justified in taking that position of going alone, but it is not the solution, because South Africa is has people from all over the world, a cross section of the global community, and therefore. And amongst all of these people are Muslims. And so it makes sense that all these Muslims should be able to hold hands and work together, in achieving the objective of establishment of the deen. At this point in time where we are, this year we're celebrating 100 years of the defeat of Islam with the defeat of the Ottoman Caliphate. And it's very painful that for us who embraced Islam or adopted Islam, who saw Islam as a tool of change, as a way of bringing about change in this country, we realize that Muslims themselves are under the same oppression that we ran away from, that we turned our back away from, and we now find ourselves having to fight two battles. We have to fight the battle of liberating our own people, the Africans in the continent, and at the same time helping the Muslims to liberate themselves. It's a very difficult ask on us.
I hear you. You make some extremely valid points, and all of these need to be noted, because if we have this idea of enhancing social cohesion while expanding on on Islam in South Africa, on building on Islam in South Africa, then some of these so-called gatekeeping strategies or gatekeeping, mechanisms that have been in place, whether it can be said, that there's this draconian idea of self-preservation of certain cultures or whatever. We need to finally let go of those mechanisms if we want real social cohesion. This is what I'm hearing while you're speaking, and you've been on the ground, you've encountered these directly yourself, as we've spoken about in the past, and communities, and that's why I say I'm hopeful that the next generation is more broad-minded and more open to the idea of greater social cohesion, meaning listening to some of the aspects of points that you raised so rightly so. And I think that a compilation like the Azanian Muslim Stories is a way of building those bridges. It's a way of opening up those sort of the discourse around what needs to be done in order to build those bridges, because these are narratives that don't only need to be told, but need to be assimilated in broader society, need to be understood in broader society. So I'm very grateful to see, these stories out, these narratives meant to really, it really is a form of activism. It really is, has potential for social cohesion, inshallah. I'm really grateful to hear your commentary on this and to have the opportunity to read these stories as well.
Jazakallah khair for that.
So, Alhamdulillah, once again, Jazakallah for your time, Brother Malik and Sister Zainab as well. We wish you all the best for the rest of Ramadan, and all the best for, collections like Azanian Muslim Stories. We'll look out for it in local bookstores and obviously through your organizations. But hopefully this is not sort of the end here. We'll see more of these collections collating these powerful stories in the future. And with that, that's it from us on Bookbytes today. Jazakallah for being on air with us.
Jazakallah khairan for having us. It was an honor for me to be your guest. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. And please continue making duas for us. Jazakallah khairan. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ameen. And so there you heard it from Sister Zainab Mujahid and Brother Malik Arafat about the Azanian Muslim Stories. Please look out for them. And more importantly, do write your stories. I really believe that our stories need to be written, they need to be told. And even if you're writing for your own family, that's the great starting point. That's it from us this week, and all the best with the rest of Ramadan and the upcoming Eid as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.